Hello, everyone. So, I'm going to talk about something that I have learned a lot about over the years. That is my journey with my mental health and mostly, specifically, depression and anxiety. My tryst with depression, or something that looked like and felt like depression, started fairly young. I would say tragically young in my life. I was a fairly motivated child in the beginning, and I didn't have problems with my schoolwork. I had no particular learning disability that I was aware of. And children are also born with a certain level of curiosity, which I was as well. But as young as 10 or 11 years of age, according to what I remember, it could be younger. I remember having these moments in my life, these small moments where I felt like I was dangerously close, like at the cusp of falling into this realm of thought where everything felt meaningless, and where I was like, what is the point of all this? What is the point of anything? I felt like I was like walking on that line, and I could have fallen into those moments, but I didn't. And it was okay. But then by the age of 16 or 17, I would say I had fallen really deep into this circle of meaninglessness, overwhelmed with life, and not being able to relate to the world or participate in the world in a way that I saw others around me do. And this is one of the reasons why depression is so difficult to understand and to explain and to study, because it's a very subjective experience. My I'm very happy is not equal to somebody else's I'm very happy. Similarly, it's a realm and it's experienced differently. And the experience itself is so abstract that if you ask me how I knew something was off, I can give you an idea, but I can't really bring to you the exact feeling. But at some point, I remember the conversations around me simply stopped making sense to me in a way that I couldn't engage in them enough to care about them and to derive any kind of positive or negative stimulus for my brain. It's like the world around me stopped stimulating me in any meaningful way. And I felt like a spectator in my own life, and I couldn't relate to people having dreams and expectations from their future, and that is not who I was. So I was privy to the experience of having expectations from your own future. I had had that experience before, but when I was in this zone, when I was completely under the shadow of this depression, I had no dreams, I had no direction, nothing motivated me. I could not make myself care about anything. And in a world where you have to wake up and everything you do in life depends upon your investment in that thing, this is like hell. It really is like hell, because you don't care about anything. That doesn't mean that thing will not have consequences for your life. If I stop caring about my body and if I start eating 10 pizzas a day, I will still like put on weight. If you don't prepare for your exams, or if you don't do well in your job, you don't care about it, but there will still be consequences. And I was in this extremely highly competitive environment in India, and I had always been, not just had I been a really good child academically in my school, that was one of the things that defined me in my head. A lot of my identity was based on me performing well academically. So, and I had no option to opt out. I didn't have an option to allow my depression to completely manifest. And this is one of the things that happens is when you have depression, and a lot of people ask, well, our ancestors didn't used to have depression. That's not true. When you do have depression and your brain knows that it's not allowed to, or it's not safe to manifest that depression or act it out, you either become manic, which is what we see a lot in people of previous generations, and you become a very anxious person, because at this point you depend upon your sense of anxiety to get tasks done. You don't have a sense of reward. Like I for a decade, close to a decade of my life, I felt no sense of accomplishment no matter what I did. It's like my dopamine pathways were completely rewired. I did the things that I did out of a sense of threat. What if I don't? So, anxiety was my motivator. It was not like it would be so good if I do something. So, that led to me like developing this entire set of comorbidities that come with being depressed: anxiety, extreme lack of self esteem. I was so confident in middle school and even in high school. I was a girl who knew what I was doing. I had my own sense of principles and morals and political opinions at 14. And then within 2 years, I had no self esteem. I didn't know who I was, I didn't know what I stood for. And a large part of that self esteem in puberty, you're already trying to figure out your place in the world. On top of that, if you have this sense of depression where I didn't know the word depression, but I understood that I feel like a fly in this world. I don't relate to anything anybody else is doing. And that led to intense isolation, intense loneliness. I had to keep performing like I cared about it because you have to be accepted. That led to so much stress on my brain all the time. Plus, I was preparing for IIT, Indian Institute of Technology. So, within all of this, led to my mind just collapsing. And within 2 years, I had no self esteem because I was like, normal people who didn't used to be so academically inclined as me are able to sustain a sense of normalcy in their lives without this thing that's happening in my brain. So there must be something wrong with my brain. That is the conclusion that I came to. And that lack of self esteem also remained for the entire next decade of my life. And I used to be a fairly confident person, I told you, in high school, up until high school. Then I remember after the age of, at around 18 or 19 years, I was in the US at this time, and somewhere I read these two words: depression and anxiety. And if I tell you, you probably will not believe. I didn't know how to pronounce anxiety, and I had heard of this word depression for the first time. And I was saying anxiety because that is how I thought it's pronounced. And I read about it in an article, and I was like, this is so much like what I experience. And during my low phase in India, people around me, people from my family used to ask me, what is your problem? Can you describe? And I had no words. I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't explain it. And I knew that even if I did, it would not end up in anything, any productive conversation. But I remember at 18 or 19, I read those two words, and I'm like, if this state of mind that I have is persisting despite me changing continents, changing lives, then this is something that has to do with my own system. And I called my sister and I said, I know what my problem is. I think I have depression and anxiety. And my sister was like, first of all, it's anxiety, it's not anxiety. I was like, okay, I have depression and anxiety. That was me then. And just to for it to have a word, just to know that I am not so irreparably broken that there is not even a word for me. I have something, I'm going through something that a lot of people have gone through before me. and that very well functioning, good, intelligent, healthy people also go through. So that just lightened things up for me. But then I did enroll myself in free therapy that was available in my college, in my university. And she also put me on very like low strength medication, antidepressants. I think SSRIs, is it? I'm not sure. But she wasn't allowed, because she was not a psychiatrist, she wasn't allowed to prescribe a whole range of things, but like a medium. But again, I was not motivated enough. I took them for a few weeks, then I left, then I took them again. So I never took the medication for long enough for it to have an effect. But I used to have therapy and we used to talk a lot. But if I'm being very honest, this ghost of depression, it kept following me for the next 10 years. And even now, like, I have nooks and corners of my life where it appears to come. And I was always a very high functioning person. I didn't have even the option of stopping functioning. So again, anxiety, I would create anxiety in my own body unconsciously to keep myself functioning, and then I would finish the tasks that I was supposed to finish. Now, when I read about depression, I understand it more and more. Again, as I said in the beginning, depression is not a condition that is very easy, or many mental health related topics, because these are such subjective experiences. It's not like an ulcer or a cyst in your stomach or on your ovary that can be seen objectively. If I say I'm having hallucinations, my subjective experience of hallucination can be completely different than somebody else saying the same thing. So, because these are such subjective realms, they are difficult to understand, and it's like the mind studying the mind. It becomes like very meta in that way. However, now when I read things about depression, I do think we have come a long way. We have come a long way in sunscreen technology in the past 10 years, and we've come a long way in our understanding of mental health. One of the things that I read in newer, like, papers or articles on neuroscience is that the the younger perspective on depression is that they don't really look at it as an illness, which it is. It is a maladaptation, but they look at it as an adaptive strategy. So at certain points, the situation that your brain was in, and it decided that this was the best strategy for survival. And we have to remember, the primary function of our brain is to keep us alive, and there is across all organisms. Even in plants, this is at the most basic level, at the most foundational level, the calculation that our brain is making. Across all species, intelligent, unintelligent, extra intelligent, all species, there is a calculation of risk versus reward. So, as much energy as I'm going to put into this, does the return justify the investment? And if the return does not justify the investment, our brain is designed to not make us want to do it. From a survival perspective also, we want to conserve energy. And I came across this concept of learned helplessness that coexists with depression in a lot of the cases. If I have to give an example, if there is a young child and the child has an alcoholic father or an alcoholic mother, and initially, when the child is confronted with an unpleasant reality, some form of abuse, some form of yelling, which is unpleasant, the initial way is, what can I do to change it? So maybe one day the child decides, today I will be really silent. Maybe it works for a week and then it doesn't. And then the child decides, I'm going to be extra pleasant to my parent. then it works for maybe 2 days, then it doesn't. Over the years, if especially when you are in certain kinds of situations, if you see a problem that is extremely painful to you and you repeatedly make attempts to get rid of that problem and nothing you do solves that problem. In this case, in my example, nothing the child does from the age of 4 or 3 to the age of 12 or 13, up until puberty, 10 years, 12 years, the child has tried countless ways to have not just the abuse to not be present, to get rid of the abuse, but to be able to extract some form of love or nurture from that parent who's not capable of giving that. Even then, like as children, you need that. So, if for 12 years this child has done something and it didn't work, the brain learns from a very neutral calculation point of view, strategically, that it is not worth the effort to try to change reality, because no matter how much energy you put, the reality is not going to change. In all forms of dysfunction, this happens. It's not just alcoholism, whatever dysfunction you are around, especially during times when you are helpless, when you're a child mostly, your brain learns that nothing you can do is going to change the reality and is going to give you the love and the protection and the nurture and the acceptance that you very sorely need at that age. So, your brain decides the optimal strategy for me to survive is to not try very hard for anything. Now, when you grow up, you realize logically that's not true. Like, if I want to maintain my health, I have to try and go to the gym and eat healthy. If I want to maintain my grades, I have to do this. Logically, you know, but it's not the problem of logic. Your brain has constructed itself around the new learning, neuroplasticity. Like the things that you do, not just do they change your state of mind, they physically change the structure of your brain. New neural pathways are connected, and old ones that you don't use atrophy and die, or they become really weak over time. So, the construction of your brain has changed for like 12 years, 13 years, where it learned that effort is useless. Now it's not going to be a matter of willpower or logic. You, in my opinion, what I understand it is, you have to retrain the brain like you do in physiotherapy. Like my sister is a physiotherapist, and when you have a surgery or an accident or something, you have to learn how to walk again. You have to retrain yourself to use certain muscles, certain joints, certain parts of the body. Similarly, because the brain is like any other muscle, it has been trained in one particular way, whether consciously or unconsciously, and it has become extremely good at that. Like we have become so good at walking that it requires zero effort. Similarly, the more the brain has lived in an environment where effort changed nothing, the idea gets solidified that you are effort is useless. So now the retraining has to be such that you convince yourself that you still have some control over your life. Effort is not useless in situations where, which are appropriate situations. Like effort is useless in trying to make an abusive person non-abusive, but effort is not useless in your career, in your state of mind, in your happiness. What I have understood, the conclusion that I have come to is that the training has to begin with small tasks. So, if you haven't used your hands after a certain surgery, you don't try to weight lift the first day you can use it. First day, you only do this. For 2 weeks, you only do this. You get your motor control back, and then maybe after a year you are able to lift weights or do other more complex activities. So The ideal strategy, and I wish somebody had told this to me when I was younger, because I was struggling so much with my mind. The ideal strategy would be pick really small and simple things. I will clean my face every day before I sleep. For instance, low effort, low risk. But within a month, if you are somebody who doesn't do it, within a month you will see difference in your skin. You want to basically retrain your brain into understanding that you are not helpless. You have control. I will walk outside for 15 minutes a day, just this small thing, and then within 1 month or within 2 weeks, your general mood will be uplifted. I will start reading something only for 15 minutes a day, and then in a month or in 2 months, you have probably finished a small book. Something that registers in your brain as an achievement, and that is a result of safe, low effort. And if you do it enough, you will automatically graduate to higher and more complex tasks, and your sense of control in your life will return. You will sit at the driver's seat of your life. I think that is what depression takes away. Therefore, because you are not at the driver's seat of your life and you are unconsciously at the behest, at the mercy of other people around you. I hope this guy treats me well. I hope I'm respected in this friend group. Otherwise, I don't know what I'm going to do. You're just going to leave and find another friend group. This is how people think when they are at the driver's seat of their life. I hope this man doesn't break his promise. That is somebody who's not sitting in the driver's seat, because if he does, I will break. Somebody who is in control or feels in control says, I hope he doesn't, but if he does, I will walk out. I will create another hope for another relationship. It sounds very basic, but it really is that mentality where who is at the driver's seat of my life? Who's at the helm of my life? Obviously, you can't control everything, but if 60 to 70% you can be like, I am at the driver's seat of my life, you can retrain your brain to be an active muscle, to be open to new information and to make decisions on the basis of the updated information. And let me also tell you, a lot of the issues that I've seen people have in their adulthood, including myself, issues with limerence, constantly chasing unavailable people, constantly wanting approval from people who have made it clear that they don't really like you. A lot of these are comorbidities which exist because of learned helplessness and depression, because you are not sitting then at the driver's seat of your life. You are sitting in the passenger seat and you are hoping that somebody will give you the respect or the love or the attention that you want. So, yeah, small steps to retrain your mind to not be a passenger in your own life and to be a driver. And today's word is learned helplessness. I will read about it more as well.